Okay, we are going to make lasagna today. Now, I know every family has their specialty when it comes to lasagna. My family happens to like mine. I think it's because I've made them eat it their whole lives. But I've taken a recipe and I've changed it and I've made it the way I wanted it to taste. So that's what we're going to do today. But first, I have a little bit of a bonus because when I make lasagna, I make French bread with it. So I've already mixed up the dough, and I can maybe show later how to mix the dough up. But right now, what I'm going to do is show you how to roll it into French rolls and how to get it ready to go in the oven. So that's where we're going to start. Now, I've already mixed up the dough and I've let it raise. We actually let it, once it's mixed up, we let it raise for an hour. And it doubles in size. So this is doubled in size, and you can see. And I'm going to dump it out here on my mat and show you what I do with it at this point. So I'm just taking it out of the bowl. You might not be able to see that, but we're just taking it out of the bowl. And I'm going to put it on my mat and kind of get the air out of it. And I'm going to cut this in half. And here's the tricky part, getting it to be even and cut in half about the same size so that your French bread, you don't have one little one and one big one, okay? That's usually how mine turn out, but that's okay. They still eat the same. All right, so I've cut it in half, and I'm going to take one of them, and we're going to roll it into a rectangle. And the way to do that, of course, is with a rolling pin. Again, Grandma's favorite rolling pin. We're going to just roll it out. So here we are. Now I'm going to prepare the pan so that we can bake it. So I just spray some corn oil, and not terribly thick, but just enough. And what we're going to do is put cornmeal on top of that oil so that the bottom of this has the cornmeal on it. So, and I don't know how much, I just shake it on there so that it's fairly covered. And now this is the part where we're going to roll up the dough, okay? So we start here and we just roll it up and roll it tight so that it's sticking together. And we're going to come up with a roll that will look like French bread here. Now when we get to the edge, we're just going to pinch it together so that it will stick, okay? And the ends, we just want to pinch those together, turn it over so that the ends are pinched in, that line from the bottom is underneath. Then we'll put it over on the pan. Do you see how long that's gotten? All right, then we take the other one and we'll do the same thing. Okay, and we just lay that there. Now, I'm going to break an egg in this bowl, add about a tablespoon of water, and then I'm just going to mix that up. And what this does, when I put this on those loaves, it will give it a sheen, and it will make it a little crusty, like French bread is supposed to be. So you can see how the egg looks. Okay, so it's mixed together with that water. And then I'm just going to take this and paint this on the loaves, like so. Then, here's the fun part. We're going to cut just slices in the top. So it looks like the French bread in the stores, but actually there's a purpose for it. It's so it can expand. And we could even put sesame seeds on the top, but I couldn't find them. So we're not putting sesame seeds on the top now. Now, we've put that bread dough aside, and we're going to let it rest for 30 minutes. And then after the 30 minutes, we will put it in a 400-degree oven for 25 minutes. And then we'll check it. And I'll show you how we can check it. But right now we're going to get the lasagna started. Right here I have a pot of water, and I like to use a lot of water so that the noodles don't get too crunched in there. And in that water I'm going to put about a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of olive oil. There we go. Now what that will do is keep the noodles from sticking together, and they'll come out and we'll be able to work with them a little better. But it's getting ready to boil, so we'll be okay with that. I'm going to turn on our sausage. Now I used 2 pounds of country sausage, or it can be called regular sausage. I don't like to use the Italian sausage or the hot sausage. I just like the plain country sausage because we add in all the flavor to it. Okay, so we're going to start that off, and I wanted to show you, this needs, we don't want it in big clumps. So I just pick it off, little pieces of the sausage. This happens to be Jimmy Dean sausage, but I've used Jimmy Dean, I've used the store's sausage that they grind there, but just make sure that it's a country sausage. And while it's cooking, we're going to keep stirring it up and mashing it so that it's not great big clumps of meat. All right, our water is boiling, and it needs to be to a full boil before you put your noodles in there. Okay, this recipe makes 2 13 by 9 pans of lasagna. And if you can see, I'm not dropping them in all at once. I'm dropping in a few at a time. And then I want that water to come back to a pretty good boil there, so that, again, they're not going to stick together. And they don't fit all the way into the water because they have to get soft, and then we can put them down. And it's boiling again, so I'll add a few more. Now the recipe says for 12 noodles, but I always do a couple of extra just in case I need them. Maybe my pan's a little bigger, maybe, so I always do a couple more just so I have plenty. Okay, the water is boiling, my noodles are all in there, and they are cooking. I just watch it until I feel like they're done. I'm sorry, but you can read on the box to how long to cook those noodles so that they're not overcooked. But I just watch. When they get soft, then I take them out. Okay, I've browned this meat, and it can still show a little bit of pink in there because we're going to be adding onions and garlic and all the things that make this taste good. If there was a lot of grease in this, we would remove it. But right now, this looks really good. It doesn't look too greasy. And our noodles are just about done here, but I'm watching it. And did you know that if you put a wooden spoon across the boiling pot, it won't boil over? So that's just kind of a little extra stuff. All right, I've got my garlic, and I like to use whole garlic because it just adds a little more flavor. But along with it, I actually add powdered garlic as well. So if I put this garlic in the microwave for 10 seconds, it will actually peel apart better, and it will peel easier, so that then you can chop it up. This one might have needed a little bit longer time, but we're getting it. And this recipe calls for 5 cloves of garlic. And a clove is each one of these, not a whole group of them, okay? And I have a little garlic press here. I'm going to turn this down a little bit and set that garlic aside, because garlic needs to be added the last, and I'll show you when, but I'm adding my onions to this, and I've chopped them fairly fine. I have a daughter that doesn't like onions big chunks, so we've chopped that up pretty fine. And it calls for a large whole onion. I actually did 2 small ones because I didn't have a large one, and I'm just showing you how I chop it. All right, and I just slice them like this, and then I turn that around and I make as small a cuts as I can to get it to chop up finer. Now, my noodles are they're really quite done. See how they fold over that spoon? Those noodles are done to take out. We don't want to overcook them. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to then pour these into a colander, rinse them with cold water so that then they're usable. All right, this meat is all browned. The onions have been put in, and they're kind of cooking with that meat, giving it some flavor. And then I add my garlic. I always add the garlic last to anything that I want to brown up a little bit, because if you cook garlic too much in a browning situation, the flavor goes away. So let's put this garlic in there. And we're just going to cook that a little bit so that it's ready to go. Now, this still has to continue cooking, but I just wanted that garlic to get in with all the rest. Now I'm going to add the different spices. This is basil, and this is really what adds the wonderful flavor to our lasagna. So I put the basil in, and I have some salt and pepper here. I'm going to put that in. And because I like garlic, I add a little bit of powdered garlic, a little bit more. This will all be in the recipe, how much I put in. And I'm just stirring this up to make it even. Now, I have lots of tomatoes that need to go in here. I have tomatoes that are called petite, diced. You can use crushed. You can use your own bottled tomatoes, but you need about 40 ounces for 2 lasagnas, okay? So I'm putting this in there. Now, I think I said it to begin with, but I just want to make sure you know I'm going to be making 2 9x13 pans of lasagna. And so if you want to just make 1 pan, then cut all these ingredients in half in this recipe. All right, so I've put the petite tomatoes in there. I like to add tomato sauce to add a little more tomato texture. And we've got that all in there. And I put a small can of tomato paste in as well. That gives it a little more tomato flavor, but not too much. I don't like real strong, so this will just make it so, gives it a little more mild texture. And then stir that all up. We just wanted to show you how red this sauce is getting because that tomato is breaking down in there, and it just gets beautiful and red and yummy. In fact, I just had a taste of it and it was really good. Okay, now we're making the other part of this 3-piece lasagna, which is the cheese. Now, I've used all kinds of different types of cottage cheese. I've also put different cheeses in it so that it was a mixture, but this is kind of my favorite. I do a 2% cottage cheese, and I'll just put this in the bowl. And we want to break 3 eggs and put them in there. Now the eggs are added to this mixture so that it thickens and you have it stand up when you cut it out of the pan. Eggs help with that. Of course, and if we cook down the tomato sauce so that it's not runny, then it also will add to being able to get a square of lasagna out instead of a big slop of lasagna out. All right. Now we add 3 tablespoons of parsley, and I have used dried parsley. I've used fresh parsley before. The dried parsley seems to give it a little more flavor. Some more garlic, because I said before I like the garlic. Now, we're going to add a cup of shredded Parmesan cheese. And again, remember, this is making 2 pans of lasagna. Now, that was only 6 ounces, so I'm just going to add a little bit of the powdered. Not a lot, just a little. Okay, our French bread is done, and I want you to hear what it sounds like when it's done. This is actually a little browner than I like, but it'll still be nice and crusty and chewy, but it sounds like this. So that tells me it's done. I have 2 pounds of mozzarella cheese, and I'm going to cut those in thin slices. Keep it in the fridge until you go to cut it so it doesn't get too soft. And I'm just going to, it's a pound per 9 by 13 pan. Okay, this is my 9 by 13 pan that I'm going to put 1 pan of lasagna in. And I just spray a little bit of this on so that, and it's just canola oil, so that the lasagna will come up and out of it easier. And the first thing that we put down is our noodles, and they will go in the pan, and they're cold, so they're in there okay. And the next thing I put down is this sauce, well, the cottage cheese, and you're going to move it out so that it covers those noodles pretty good, remembering that you're going to have another layer of this and another layer of this. So we're kind of dividing it in half to do the two 9 by 13 pans. I have at times taken them out and divided it in half so I had the right amount, but we'll show you how this looks. Okay, and the next thing we put on is our tomato sauce. All right, now you're kind of going to need to do equal amounts of the meat and the sauce that is still liquidy. You don't want all of the liquid to be in one and all of just the sauce in the other one. Now we have our cheese, and we're just going to lay them on there. About this. Okay, and the next layer we will add 3 more noodles. I've also put it so that they're standing up on the edges. I've tried it all, but this works. And now we put another layer of the cottage cheese. Okay, does everything have to be covered completely? No, it doesn't, but just make it as even as you can. And then we go back to our sauce. Okay, that's ready. And the last thing we do is the mozzarella cheese again. Okay, this lasagna is now ready to go in the oven. And we bake this at 350 degrees. Have the oven hot before you put it in. And you're going to bake it for about 35 minutes. But it needs to look bubbly. The cheese is all melted and it's bubbling kind of all over, so that's what makes it look done. Okay, now what I'm going to do with this pan of lasagna is I'm going to wrap it in foil, put it in my refrigerator until I'm ready to bake it. So it will be cold when I go to bake it. And I still put it in a 350 degree oven, but I probably will need to bake it for about 45 minutes to get it done to where we want. And I've also made the second pan of lasagna, wrapped it really good, and put it in the freezer. And then when I want to cook that, I bring it out, let it thaw some, and then put it in the oven, and I have to do that one for 50 or 55 minutes to make sure that it's done and ready to eat. Thank you. This was fun. I hope you enjoy the lasagna.